How is it that people achieve their results? How do they achieve their best results? What happens when the results are not so good? These are the things we'll be exploring in this session. As a mentor, this will help you understand your client even better. At the end of this session, you'll be able to analyse the process by which we achieve results, explain the importance of state in achievement, and evaluate the key factors in taking responsibility. Mentoring is about helping and supporting someone in achieving something they want to achieve. The model that we're going to consider comes from neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP as it's commonly called. It's useful to understand how we achieve our results if you're going to be able to do that supporting role and to help your client in the most effective way. Just imagine that there is something happening outside of ourselves, some external event. It could be a conversation, an experience, in fact any situation that's outside of yourself. At any one moment we have a lot of information coming into us. Apparently we have 2 million bits of information per second hitting us. It's just not possible for us to process that amount of information. So what we do is to filter that information. We filter it to much smaller amounts, and then at any moment in time we have 7 plus or minus 2 pieces of information in our conscious mind. We have 3 ways of filtering the information. First one is we delete information. Deleting information means that we are able to concentrate on those things that are important to us. It's about what we pay attention to and what that enables us to do. However, we sometimes delete information that would be useful for us not to. For example, where your car keys are. And sometimes we delete information because we're focusing on something else. For example, when someone says, "Nobody ever praises me in this organisation." They have deleted all the praise that they have received because they've been focusing on the times when they're not praised. So when you're helping people, it's worthwhile listening out for what they're paying attention to and what they're not. Generalization is very useful for learning things. It means that every time we come across a door, we don't have to remember how to learn to open it all over again. We take the generalized model that we have about opening doors and use that. Therefore, generalizations are vital for learning. However, we sometimes generalize in a way that's not so useful for us. We will take 1 or 2 experiences in a particular situation, which may not be a good experience, and then generalize out that all similar experiences are not going to be good as well. For example, we have one attempt at using a new piece of equipment and it doesn't go so well, and then we generalize that we're a technophobe and act on the basis of that label that we've now given ourselves. So, as with deletion, generalization is a very useful process, and we can use it in a way that's not so useful as well. When you're mentoring, it's useful to pay attention to what are the generalizations the person is making. What are the generalizations that they're making about their own capabilities and about others? The third filter is distortion. This is the basis of creativity. This is where we take information that's coming into us and twist it and turn it and create something new. For example, someone will take information in about a person and information about cubes and make a cubist painting. So distortion is an important process. It enables us to come up with new ideas, solutions, and new ways of considering situations. We're also very good at taking information and making meaning out of it. For example, I remember someone saying to me that if someone had a weak handshake, that meant that they were not employable. This person had somehow distorted the information about someone's handshake and created a meaning from that they were not employable, and then acted on that basis. If you are working with your client, you will want to note what meaning are they making from things that are happening. Are they making meaning that helps them or hinders them? How can you help them come up with new and creative ideas? So, on what do we base the way that we will distort, delete, or generalize information? Well, one of the bases is values. Values are those things that are important to us and by which we evaluate as being good or bad. For example, if you ask someone what's important to them about their boss, they may say that they are fair, respectful, honest, open, etc. And that would be their values. And linked to this is beliefs. Beliefs are what we hold to be true. Each of us have our own set of beliefs by which we live our lives. For example, eating wholemeal bread is good for you, or I'm not confident, or I am confident. These are all beliefs, and these are beliefs that we hold about ourselves or about other people or things. Then there's memories and experiences. That's what's happened in similar circumstances in the past. And there's attitude. For example, people will filter for very different information if they have a can-do attitude than if they have a job's worth attitude. The first will look for all the things they can do to help, and the second will look for all the reasons why they're not able to do things. Then there's language. The language that we use or other people use to us has a big impact on our interpretation of events. And then there's decisions. Decisions that we've made in the past. For example, if we decided at school that we were no good at maths, and then if we're asked to do something that involves maths, that will affect how we filter that and the results that we get. When you're mentoring, you may want to challenge some of these if the person has created barriers to success for themselves. For example, to challenge beliefs like, I'm not a success. Information comes in, goes through our filters, and then we create a representation of the event in our minds. The event and how we internally represent it are never the same, because we're always filtering. We construct reality by taking the information coming into us and applying the filters. So we all perceive things differently, even if we have the same experience as someone else. We will perceive it differently and hold it in our minds differently. So we take in the information, filter it, and then store it in a filtered way. As a mentor, you'll want to find out how is your client thinking about the situation. What is their perception of it, and is it helping them or hindering them? We hold that internal representation in our mind either as pictures and images. So you will have an image of where you went on holiday last year, for example. As sounds. So if I asked you what's your favourite piece of music, you can probably hear it in your mind. And feelings. Some things we will remember by feelings that we had at the time. If someone asks you about a happy occasion, you'll have a representation of that feeling in your mind. Feelings may be emotions, or touching things, or doing something. Then there's taste. If you're asked to remember your favourite food, you will store that as a taste, and maybe a picture. And then lastly there's smell. If someone asks you about fresh bread, you may have stored that as a smell. And once the information has been filtered and represented, we may turn it into thoughts and self-talk. The way that we represent what we have experienced and our thoughts about it will create a particular state or frame of mind about something. So helping people to change the way they are representing situations or thinking about situations can bring about large changes in their frame of mind. Another thing that affects our state is our physiology, or the way that our body is. Your state of mind after a run will be very different from your state of mind before it. So as a mentor, you may want to use this to help your client to get in a better frame of mind if that's what's needed. For example, getting them to go for a little walk, or stand up, or sit in a different way. That will all help. So, our internal representations and our physiology create our state or frame of mind. And our frame of mind or state directly influences our behaviour or actions. If as a result of the way you filtered and represented the information, you are feeling positive and energetic, your behaviour will be very different than if you filtered and represented the same event so that you feel negative and listless. It is our behaviour and our actions that give us our results. Two people can experience exactly the same event and yet respond to it very differently. It's not about the event, it's to do with how they process the information and the state that they created as a result. It's not about what happens, it's about how you handle it that makes the difference in results. This is very important in mentoring because our role is to help our client achieve more, so that we'll want to focus on how they are filtering and representing the information that's coming into them. How are they deleting, distorting and generalizing? How can they represent things in a way that will give them more of the results that they want? For this exercise, write an example of an experience someone may have and how they may filter and represent it in a way that gives them positive results. And how the same person may experience the same event but filter and represent it in a negative way, and that gives them negative results. Here's an example answer. What about these two ways of thinking of the same situation? The results from this will depend not on the event, but on the way the person thinks about it, the meaning they make from it. We have a choice. We can blame everything outside of ourselves when we don't get the results we want. We can give away our power and happiness to other people and things by saying until they change, I can't achieve anything. Or we can recognize that if we think differently, or if we change our part in any situation, it's going to change things. It will lead us to taking ownership and responsibility for our lives and our results. That is a much more empowering stance. As a mentor, you'll want to work with your client to get them to understand what they can do to influence and change a situation, so they can get the results that they and/or their organization wants. For this exercise, write down 3 situations that you've come across where the results would have been very different if someone had taken ownership rather than blaming and making excuses.